Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The sea was black as pitch, its restless waves glinting faintly beneath a moon that hung thin and pale over the narrow sea. The wind carried the salt of faraway shores and the whisper of trouble. A small ship cut through the darkness, a worn, single-masted vessel called Black Betha, her sails patched but proud, her hull steady despite the tossing waters. At her helm stood Davos Seaworth, a man not yet known as Sir, not yet called the Onion Knight. He was lean, quick-eyed, with hands calloused from ropes and rudder, and a face weathered by the sea. His ship was his life, his crew, his family, and his trade, though not entirely lawful, his craft and art. Smuggling, he liked to say, was but honest sailing under false colors. This night, however, honesty and falsehood weighed heavier than usual on his mind. In the hold below, beneath a layer of fish and casks of salt pork, lay his cargo, a single sealed crate, light for its size, bound in chains of silver. He had not asked what it held, for the man who'd paid him in lies had eyes too sharp and words too smooth. "Take this to Dragonstone," the Lycene had said. "Tell no one, speak to none. Deliver it to a man named Meister Kelther. You will be paid thrice over." Davos had seen enough of the world to know that such bargains rarely came clean. But gold was gold, and winter was always coming. He stood at the tiller now, feeling the pull of the sea and the weight of the promise. The crew moved about the deck, quiet men, most of them former thieves or sailors gone rogue. They trusted Davos, for he had never left a man behind, nor cheated one of his share. Still, there was unease among them. "Storm's brewin'," muttered Corwin, his first mate, a heavy-set man with a beard thick as rope. "Sky's gone green near the east. That's no common wind." Davos nodded, squinting toward the horizon. He could taste it. The air had that bitter tang that came before a squall. "Aye," he said, "we'll not make Dragonstone tonight. Set course for Blackhaven's Cove. We'll wait it out." The men moved to obey, but before they could shift the sails, a cry rose from the lookout post. "Sails! Off the port side!" Davos's heart sank. He turned sharply and saw them, two dark shapes cutting through the moonlight fast and low. No merchantmen these. Their sails bore the crude sigil of the Kraken. Ironborn. Reavers out of pike, most like, or worse. Desperate ones from the scattered rocks of the stepstones. "Seven hells," muttered Davos. "They've seen us." "Can we outrun 'em?" Corwin asked. "Not with this wind," Davos replied. His eyes darted to the coastline, jagged cliffs rising in the distance. "We'll have to lose them in the shoals." Orders rang out. Men hauled at the ropes. The Black Betha turned hard toward the coast, and the chase began. The iron-born ships, lean, long, built for raiding, came on fast, their oars beating the water in unison, black banners snapping in the wind. For an hour, the sea was filled with the sound of pursuit, creaking wood, shouting men, and the pounding of the surf against stone. The Black Betha slipped between rocks like a shadow, her captain knowing these waters as a man knows his own scars. Twice the Ironborn nearly had them. Twice they lost ground when Davos took his ship through channels too narrow for a galley. But when the storm broke, it broke hard. Lightning split the sky, wind roared like a living thing, and the sea rose up in fury. Waves crashed against the deck, tearing ropes, snapping planks. Men shouted to one another, but their voices were drowned by thunder. "Lighten her," Davos bellowed. "Toss the barrels." Corwin's face went pale. "The cargo too?" Davos hesitated, only for a heartbeat. Then the wind screamed again, and the decision was made for him. "Not yet," he growled. "We'll not toss gold till death takes us." But below, in the hold, something was stirring. The chained crate had shifted with the storm's roll, its lid trembling. From within came a faint sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping like nails against wood. No man on deck heard it at first, not above the wind and rain. But down in the darkness, young Merritt, the cabin boy, crouched beside it, his wide eyes fixed on the chains. "Cap'n said not to touch it," he whispered to himself. But curiosity was a hard master. The tapping grew louder, almost like knocking now. "Seven save me," he muttered, reaching out. He brushed the cold metal, and to his horror, the lock clicked open. Above, Davos wrestled with the tiller, guiding Black Betha through the storm's teeth. He did not see the faint green light that began to glow below deck, nor the shadow that stretched across the hold, long and sinuous like smoke. When the next wave struck, the ship groaned like a wounded beast. Merritt screamed, a short, sharp cry that was lost to the wind, and the crate burst open. A shape rose from within, cloaked in light like wildfire. A woman's form, pale and terrible, her eyes burning with something unholy. The sea swallowed the scream. The storm raged on, and Davos Seaworth, smuggler of the narrow sea, felt the wind shift once more, though now it carried not salt and rain, but the scent of something far more dangerous. He looked up at the storm and whispered, "Mother, have mercy. What have I carried aboard?" The dawn came cold and gray, a weary light creeping across the narrow sea as the storm drifted northward, leaving wreckage and foam in its wake. The Black Betha rode low in the water, her sails in tatters, her decks slick with rain and sea spray. The men moved in silence, faces drawn and pale, repairing ropes, hauling water, counting the lost. 3 gone to the storm, and the cabin boy, Merritt, nowhere to be found. Davos stood near the prow, his eyes on the horizon. His cloak was soaked through, his beard heavy with salt. The sea had spared them, yet something in his gut told him their troubles had only just begun. He turned as Corwin approached, carrying a small, rusted lantern. "Hold's flooded," Corwin said. "We lost half the pork and near all the fish barrels. The chains around that crate snapped clean through. And there's something strange." "Strange how?" Davos asked, already uneasy. Corwin shook his head. "Can't rightly say. The wood's blackened, like it was burned from the inside, and there's this smell, like ashes and perfume." Davos frowned. "Burned? In the middle of a storm?" He descended the narrow ladder into the hold, where shadows clung like smoke. Water sloshed around his boots, and the smell hit him at once, rich and bitter, like incense gone wrong. The crate lay split in two, its insides charred, the silver chains melted. The deck boards beneath it were scorched, and in the blackened spot where the crate had been, something glittered faintly, a ring of pale glass, smooth as a mirror. He knelt, touching it. It was cool to the skin. He felt no heat, no spark of flame, yet the air around it seemed heavy, as if it drank the light. "Merritt?" he called softly, though he already knew there'd be no answer. Only the creak of the hull replied. When he climbed back to the deck, he found the men waiting, their faces wary. Sailors knew when to keep silent, but there was a tension in their eyes that needed words. "'Twas cursed," said one, an older man named Bragg. "I felt it. The storm came for that thing, not us." "Enough," Davos said sharply. "We're not children afraid of ghost tales." But even as he spoke, he remembered the green light in the dark, the cry cut short. He remembered how the wind had changed, how it had smelled of something not born of sea or sky. He ordered the crew to set course again for Dragonstone. The gold would still be waiting, and whatever sorcery had been loosed aboard, it was no business of his. Smugglers asked no questions, and that rule had kept him alive longer than most. By noon, the sun broke through the clouds, weak but steady. The men took heart, working the ropes with new vigor. Yet Davos could not shake the unease. He felt it in the wind, in the way the sea seemed to hush around them. That evening, as the last light faded from the waves, a cry went up from the starboard side. "Ship! Ship to leeward!" Davos turned and saw her. A long ship, sleek and black, its prow carved into a kraken's head. Ironborn again. The same reavers who'd chased them before, no doubt. How had they survived the storm? Or had they followed him through it? "Seven damn them," Corwin muttered. "They've the devil's own luck." "They've more than luck," Davos said grimly. "They found us twice in one night's sea. That takes skill, or sorcery." The longship was closing fast, its oars dipping in perfect rhythm. Davos could see figures upon its deck now, iron helms gleaming, and at the prow stood a tall man with hair the color of rusted steel, his cloak snapping behind him like wings. "Captain Harris Volmark," Corwin said under his breath. "I know that one. Calls himself the Kraken's shadow. He leaves none alive." "Then we best not meet him," Davos said, his voice low but steady. "Reef the sails. We'll hug the coast and find the shallows." But the Ironborn knew these waters too, and before long the Black Betha was trapped, the cliffs to one side, open sea to the other, and the longship gaining fast. "Ready the crossbows!" Davos shouted. "Aim for the oars!" Bolts flew, whistling across the waves. Two struck true, snapping oars and splintering wood. But the Ironborn answered in kind. Flaming arrows streaked through the dusk, one striking the Betha's rigging, another sinking into the deck with a hiss of fire and smoke. Then, over the din, came a sound that froze every man in place, a low, humming tone rising from the hold below. It was faint at first, almost like the drone of bees, but growing stronger by the heartbeat. Davos's eyes widened. "The crate," he breathed. "Gods help us." Before anyone could move, the sound burst into a scream of light. The deck flared green, not flame, not lightning, but something older, colder. A woman's voice echoed from below, speaking words no man understood, though they burned in the ear and the mind alike. The Ironborn ship faltered, its men shouting in terror. One of them leapt overboard, another dropped his torch into the sea, and from the hold of the Black Betha, a figure rose once more, not flesh and blood, but pale and shifting, her hair like streaming smoke, her eyes two stars of emerald fire. The sea itself seemed to recoil. "Who carries me across the mortal tide?" she whispered, her voice both near and far. "Who bears the dead of fire undone?" Davos stood frozen, his hand gripping the tiller. He did not understand her words, yet they struck him with the weight of a curse. The men fell to their knees, some praying, others too afraid to speak. The Ironborn, seeing what no sane sailor wished to see, turned their ship about and fled, oars thrashing. Within moments they vanished into the mist. When Davos dared to look again, the apparition was gone. The green light faded. The ship lay silent, but for the whisper of waves. Corwin's voice broke the stillness. What was she?" Davos looked toward the black horizon. "Something that should have stayed buried," he said softly. "And gods forgive me. I brought her to sea." He turned then, staring at the distant shadow of Dragonstone rising against the dawn, a dark fortress born of fire and storm. Whatever waited there, he knew, was bound to the thing that had escaped his hold. And somehow, before this voyage was done, he would have to face it. For smugglers may flee the law, the sea, and even the wrath of kings, but not the debts owed to the dead. The shadow of Dragonstone rose from the mist like the bones of a slain god. Its towers were dark against the morning light, the carved dragons upon its walls glistening with rain. The sea beat against the cliffs below, as though reminding all who came that this was no place for the faint of heart. The Black Betha limped toward the fortress harbor, her mast cracked, her sail patched and ragged. The men moved about in weary silence, every eye avoiding the scorched hatch that led to the hold. None wished to speak of what they had seen. Even Corwin, bold-tongued as ever, crossed himself before the Mother's Star and muttered prayers beneath his breath. Davos stood at the bow, eyes fixed on the stone keep ahead. He had smuggled cargo here before, casks of wine, barrels of onions, even a cache of Myrish lace meant for the lady of the castle, but never anything that stirred storms and chased away iron-born raiders with witchfire. As they drew near the dock, a small party waited for them, men in dark cloaks bearing the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen upon their shoulders. The leader was tall, thin, and sharp-featured, with a maester's chain around his neck. His hair was streaked with gray, his eyes pale and unblinking. "Sir Davos Seaworth?" the man asked, though the word sir was spoken like mockery. Davos inclined his head slightly. "No, sir, good Maester. I've brought what was promised out of Lys." The Maester studied him for a moment, then gestured to the men behind. "Unload the cargo." Davos hesitated. "You might want to be careful. The crate didn't take kindly to the storm. It's open." The Maester's eyes narrowed, and for the first time a flicker of emotion crossed his face. "Open?" "It burned," Davos said quietly. "From within. One of my lads is gone. There was something inside. A woman, or the shadow of one. The sea itself turned against us." The Maester's jaw tightened. "You were not meant to see her," he said, "nor to speak of her. She was a secret meant for fire and stone." Davos folded his arms. "I don't care what she was meant for. I lost good men. And I'll not see more die for what's in that box." The Maester looked to the sky, as though weighing Davos's worth. "Your part in this is done, smuggler. You will be paid. Then you will forget." He turned, calling his men to bring the crate ashore, but when they descended into the hold, they stopped short. "It's gone!" one cried. "The box! It's gone!" Davos's blood went cold. He leapt down after them, and sure enough, the place where the crate had split lay empty. Only the black ring of scorched wood remained, the smell of ashes still thick in the air. "She was here," Davos muttered. "I saw her. She rose like fire itself." The Maester's gaze grew dark. "Then she is free." "What was she?" Davos demanded. The Maester hesitated, then spoke in a low, even tone. "A relic of the old powers, a child of Valyria, shaped by fire, bound by blood. The Lysene thought to control her. Fools that they are. We sought to bring her to Dragonstone, where fire is law and stone remembers." Davos frowned. "You're saying she's some kind of sorceress?" "She was," the Maester replied. "Centuries ago. What she is now is less clear." A shout from above deck cut through the air. "Captain, on the cliffs!" Davos scrambled up the ladder and froze. Upon the cliffs that loomed over the harbor, a lone figure stood, her hair white as sea foam, her robes torn and fluttering in the wind. Even from this distance he could see her eyes. 2 points of green fire. The same eyes that had burned in the dark of his hold. She came with the tide. One sailor whispered, "Like a wraith." The maester stepped forward, clutching the railing. "She's drawn to the stone," he murmured, "to the dragons that once slept beneath it. Gods help us all." The woman, or whatever she was, raised a hand. The wind stilled. Even the sea seemed to hold its breath. Then, in a voice that carried across the waves, she spoke. The fire was broken. The blood was unbound. You sought to chain flame, and flame remembers. Lightning struck the cliffs behind her, and in the flash of white, she was gone. The silence that followed was heavy. Then the maester turned sharply to Davos. "You brought her here. You will help find her." "I'm no hunter of ghosts," Davos said. "Then you'll die with one loose upon these shores," the maester replied. "If she reaches the castle, she'll wake what sleeps beneath, and there are things under Dragonstone best left to slumber." Davos looked toward the looming keep. Smoke curled from its chimneys, but deep within, he fancied he saw another kind of fire, red and living. He thought of the storm, of Merritt's scream, of the Ironborn fleeing in terror. He had wanted gold, not ghosts, yet fate had bound him to this cursed errand. "Very well," he said at last. "I'll help you catch her. But when this is done, I want my coin, and I want no more dealings with your fire or your stone." The maester gave a small, grim smile. "A fair bargain, though I fear you've already struck one, whether you know it or not." By dusk, they had gathered a small party. 5 of Davos's men, 3 guards from the castle, and the maester himself. Torches were lit, and they began their climb up the narrow path that wound toward the cliffs. The wind moaned through the cracks in the rock, and the air smelled of salt and smoke. "Captain," Corwin muttered, keeping close, "this isn't our fight." "It became ours when that thing came aboard," Davos said. "If we don't end it, it'll end us." As they climbed, a sound echoed through the fog. Not the cry of gulls, but something softer, almost like singing. The words were in no tongue Davos knew, yet they carried a strange sorrow that made the hair rise on his arms. The maester stopped, listening. "She remembers," he whispered. "All that was lost." The song grew louder, closer, until it filled the air. Then, from the mist ahead, came a shape. The pale woman once more, her feet bare upon the stone, her eyes glowing brighter than before. "Turn back," she said. "The chains are broken and the fire must walk free." Davos raised his lantern. "We mean no harm. Tell us what you want." Her gaze settled on him, and for a moment he thought he saw pity there. "I want what was stolen, my heart, my fire, my name." Then the cliff shook, a deep rumble rising from beneath the earth, as though something vast had stirred below. The torches flickered, the sea roared, and the maester cried out, "By the 7, she's waking the mountain!" A fissure split the rock beside them, spilling heat and smoke. Davos stumbled back, gripping Corwin's arm. "She'll bring the whole island down," Corwin gasped. "No," Davos said, eyes fixed on the apparition. "She's not destroying it. She's calling to something inside." Far below, in the depths beneath Dragonstone, something answered. A dull, rhythmic sound, like the beating of a buried heart. And for the first time in his life, Davos Seaworth wished he'd never taken this voyage at all. The mountain shuddered, as if some giant deep within had stirred from centuries of slumber. The air grew heavy, tasting of ash and heat. Every man upon the cliffs faltered, Torches trembled in their hands, their flames whipped by a wind that seemed to come from below. Davos steadied himself against the rock, his eyes fixed upon the figure who stood before them, the pale woman, her hair flying about her like tendrils of smoke. Her song rose again, the words strange and haunting. From fire I was born, by fire unmade. The sea carried me, the stone called me home. The ground beneath her feet split, red light spilling through the cracks. The maester cried out, "Stop her! The vault beneath the keep! She'll wake the Forge of Dragons!" At once the guards rushed forward, though their courage faltered with each step. One raised a crossbow, loosing a bolt that passed straight through the woman's chest. It clattered against the rocks behind her, harmless. She did not even flinch. Her eyes turned toward the man who had fired. For an instant, her gaze blazed so fiercely that the guard's torch exploded in his hand, showering him with sparks. He fell, screaming, rolling upon the ground until Davos dragged him back from the fissure. "She's no flesh and blood," Davos shouted above the rumble of the earth. "You can't kill what's already dead." "Then bind her," the maester gasped. He fumbled with a pouch at his belt and drew forth a small glass vial. Inside, green liquid glowed faintly, alive with shifting light. "Dragonfire distilled," he said. "It can chain what common flame cannot." Davos looked at him, incredulous. "You mean to throw wildfire at her? You'll burn us all." But the maester had already uncorked it. The liquid hissed and fumed, casting green reflections across his face. He muttered words in a language Davos did not know and hurled the vial at the apparition. The glass shattered upon the stone before her feet, and for a moment it seemed to work. The flame rose in a bright column, coiling around her like serpents. She shrieked, her voice a clash of steel and storm. The light dimmed, flickered, then burst outward. The shockwave threw them all to the ground. Davos rolled across the rocks, the world spinning in flashes of green and red. He tasted blood and ash. When he looked up again, the woman was gone, and where she had stood was a gaping wound in the earth, glowing from within. The maester staggered to his knees, face ashen. "She's gone into the fire. Gods forgive us all." Davos rose slowly. "You said she'd wake something beneath." "Aye," the maester whispered. "The forges of Valyria's remnant, the Dragonstone itself." Even as he spoke, the rumbling grew louder. A column of smoke rose from the fissure, thick and dark, twisting upward like a living thing. Within it, faint shapes moved, wings, tails, teeth, shadows of beasts long thought dead. The men stumbled back toward the path, terror lending them speed. Rocks tumbled from the cliffs, and the sea below began to churn as if in answer. "Back to the ship," Davos ordered. "Move!" They half ran, half fell down the path, the mountain groaning above them. The Black Betha waited at the dock, still creaking at her moorings. The sky had gone an angry red, the setting sun blurred by smoke. When they reached the harbor, they found chaos already brewing. The castle's bells were ringing, guards shouting orders, small folk running to and fro with buckets of seawater. Columns of smoke rose from vents in the rock itself, glowing faintly at their edges. "What in the seven is happening?" A dockhand cried. "Dragonfire!" the maester rasped. "The mountain bleeds." Davos grabbed his arm. "You said she was bound by blood. If she's gone into that fire, can she come out again?" The old man's eyes met his. "If the bond still holds, yes, but not as she was." Thunder rolled across the sky. Lightning split the clouds, not white, but green, like the light that had filled Davos's hold. And through the smoke that veiled the mountain's crown, he saw something vast and winged take form. a shadow with eyes like molten gold. For a heartbeat, his mind refused to believe it. But then came the sound, a low, throbbing roar that shook the very air, too deep for any wind, too alive for any storm. "By all the gods," Corwin whispered, "that's a dragon." "No," Davos said softly, "it's her." The shape wheeled once above the cliffs, scattering embers like rain, and then plunged back into the mountain's heart. The rumbling ceased. The smoke began to thin, leaving only the smell of brimstone and burned salt. For a long while, no one spoke. Then the Maester turned to Davos. "She has bound herself to the forge. Whatever spirit remained in her is now wedded to fire." "Then it's done?" Davos asked. "She's gone?" The Maester's gaze drifted toward the dark keep. "Nothing born of Valyria is ever truly gone." That night, Dragonstone burned with restless heat. The stones of its halls were warm beneath the hand, the air thick with the scent of smoke and old iron. Davos and his crew were given quarters in the lower barracks, where the Maester brought wine and silence in equal measure. "Your gold will be sent with the tide tomorrow," the Maester said. "Take it and leave. This place will not be safe for much longer." Davos studied him. "You mean she'll rise again?" The Maester hesitated. "The fire will call to her kind, and there are those in the realm who would answer it. The Lysene were not the only ones seeking such power." "Then burn the place to the ground," Davos said harshly. "Seal the caves. Flood them if you must." The Maester gave a weary smile. "Do you think no one's tried? Fire made this island, and fire will unmake it when its time comes. Until then, we guard what we can and pray." Davos drank in silence. He wanted only to sail away, to feel the clean salt wind and forget the smell of ash. But his sleep that night brought no peace. He dreamed of the storm again, the creak of ropes, the flash of green lightning, Merritt's scream swallowed by the sea. Then he saw her, the pale woman walking across a field of black sand, the sea burning behind her. She held something in her hands, a heart glowing with fire, and when she looked at him, her voice was both gentle and terrible. "You carried me," she said, "and I remember." He woke before dawn, sweat cold upon his skin. The ship rocked gently at her moorings, the air still. Only the faint hum beneath the stones of Dragonstone reminded him that the fire had not died. By morning, the gold was delivered as promised. Davos gave half to his men and loaded the rest aboard. As they raised sail and the wind caught their canvas, he looked once more upon the fortress behind him. Dark, ancient, its towers veiled in mist. He told himself he would never return. But deep within, he knew the sea had marked him, and the fire had remembered his name. The Black Betha slipped into open water, her prow cutting the waves cleanly once more. The storm had passed, the horizon was clear, yet Davos could not shake the feeling that something unseen followed. Not upon the waves, but beneath them, whispering from the depths. And in that whisper, faint but certain, he heard the echo of a woman's voice, the same that had spoken in the storm. "Fire and sea," it murmured, "are never far apart." Davos turned his face to the wind, his hand tight upon the tiller, and sailed eastward toward dawn, away from Dragonstone, but not from the shadow that had taken root in his heart. The wind blew cold across the narrow sea as the Black Betha made her slow way eastward. For 3 days and nights, no ship crossed their path, and no storm troubled their sails. Yet Davos felt the sea watching him, as though the waves themselves remembered the fire that had been loosed from his hold. The men were uneasy. They spoke in hushed voices, and when night fell, none lingered above deck for long. Even Corwin, who had faced pirate blades and royal patrols without flinching, kept glancing to the horizon as though expecting some ghostly sail to appear from the mist. Davos stood at the helm each dusk, his eyes on the west where Dragonstone had vanished beyond sight. He had seen many strange things in his life: smugglers' tricks, pirate curses, even the red glow of wildfire upon the water, but nothing like the pale woman who had turned to smoke and storm. He told himself she was gone, bound again to stone and fire, yet her voice haunted his dreams still. On the fifth morning, as the sun rose over the green-gray waves, a cry came from the lookout. "Ship to starboard!" Davos lifted his spyglass. A single sail approached, a narrow craft flying no banner. Its hull was dark and low, built for speed rather than trade. He cursed under his breath. "We're not rid of trouble yet." Corwin squinted. "Not ironborn by the look. Too slim. Could be lysine." "Or worse," Davos said. "Hold steady. Let's see what game they play." The ship drew closer, gliding across the water with unnatural grace. No oars broke the surface. No sound of men or ropes carried across the waves. The Black Betha's crew stood tense, hands on crossbows and knives. When the stranger came within shouting distance, Davos cupped his hands and called out, "Ho there! What ship sails without flag or name?" For a moment, there was no reply. Then a voice, soft, melodic, and unmistakably foreign, drifted over the water. "A friend, Sir Davos Seaworth, a friend who seeks what you carried from Lys." Davos's stomach turned to ice. "I've nothing from Lys now but bad memories." The voice laughed lightly, though there was no mirth in it. "Ah, but memory is the strongest cargo of all. May I come aboard?" Without waiting for permission, the stranger's vessel turned, coasting alongside the Betha. A gangplank extended from its deck, as if pushed by unseen hands. Davos's men raised their weapons, but he motioned for them to hold. From the other ship stepped a man of middle years, slender and tall, his hair the color of polished bronze. His clothes were lysine silk, though travel-stained, and his eyes, pale and almost colorless, gleamed with a serpent's patience. "You've some nerve, boarding a smuggler's ship uninvited," Davos said. "Nerve," the man said, smiling faintly, "is the coin of those who deal in secrets. You may call me Kaliros. I believe you once carried a crate for me." Davos's hands clenched at his sides. "That crate cost me men and nearly my life. You'll not find it here." Kaliros tilted his head. "No, I imagine not." "Still, its contents interest me greatly. You see, what you carried was not meant for Dragonstone's Meisters. It was meant for me. They stole her from my vaults before I could finish the work." Davos's eyes narrowed. "You mean the woman, the thing that came out of that box?" "The same," Kaliros said softly. "She is a relic of old Valyria, as you've no doubt guessed. A vessel of living flame. But she is incomplete, missing what binds her power to form. You freed her, smuggler, though you did not mean to, and now she walks the world again." Davos shook his head. "She's bound beneath Dragonstone. You'll not find her wandering." Kaliros's smile did not fade. "Are you so sure? Fire has many shapes, and stone remembers what it loves. Even now she stirs, and if she wakes fully, the island will not hold." Corwin spat into the sea. "More lysine lies." "Perhaps," Kaliros said, turning to him with an expression too calm for insult. "Yet even a lie can burn a city if it is wrapped in flame." He looked back at Davos. "I need your help, Captain. You've sailed with her spirit once. You can find her again." "You've had your answer," Davos said flatly. We're done with your curses. Now off my ship before I toss you back to the sea." Kaliros sighed as if disappointed in a child. "Very well, but when the sky glows green and the tides turn black, remember this meeting. She will call to you again, Davos Seaworth, and when she does, you'll wish you'd listened." He stepped back onto his own deck, the gangplank drawing away as smoothly as it had come. His ship turned without a sound and slipped into the mist, vanishing as though swallowed by it. The men exhaled as one, and Corwin muttered, "I'll take Ironborn over sorcerers any day." Davos said nothing. He stared at the horizon where the Lysine had disappeared, unease coiling in his gut. The man's words clung to him like sea salt. That night, the wind died. The sea lay flat as glass, the stars sharp above. Davos dozed in his chair by the tiller, the creak of wood his only companion. Then he dreamed again. He was beneath the waves, walking along a floor of black sand. Around him moved faint shapes, dragons, serpents, things with wings like sails. In the distance burned a great green light, pulsing like a heart. And from that light came her voice, low and sorrowful. "You carried me once. You will carry me again." He woke with a start, the taste of salt thick on his tongue. The sea was calm still, but the air smelled faintly of smoke. He went below deck and found Corwin already awake, staring at a faint glow seeping through the floorboards. "Captain," he said quietly, "tell me I'm dreaming." But Davos knew he was not. The glow came from the same spot where the cursed crate had once rested, the boards faintly warm to the touch. He fetched a bucket of seawater and poured it across the planks. Steam rose at once, hissing, but when it cleared, the light remained. "She's calling," Davos murmured. "From Dragonstone?" Corwin asked. "From somewhere," Davos said. "And if that Lysine was right, she's not finished with us." Before dawn, a wind rose out of the west, sudden and fierce. The men scrambled to secure the sails, shouting above the roar. Davos took the helm, fighting to keep the Betha steady. Lightning forked across the horizon. Green lightning. "She's waking," Davos whispered. The storm struck, harder than any before. Waves towered over the deck, slamming against the hull. The mast groaned, ropes snapping like whips. And then, through the thunder, a sound echoed, faint but unmistakable, a woman's voice singing. The sea itself seemed to answer. A column of light rose from the depths ahead, twisting like a serpent of emerald fire. The men cried out, shielding their eyes. Davos gripped the tiller with all his strength, his heart pounding. "Hold fast!" he shouted. But in the next flash of lightning, he saw her, not upon the cliffs nor in the sky, but standing upon the water itself, her pale hair streaming, her eyes burning with green flame. The sea roared around her, yet she did not sink. She lifted a hand, and the wind obeyed. And Davos Seaworth, smuggler and sailor, realized that the fire he had once carried for gold had now come to claim him. The storm struck with the wrath of gods long forgotten. Waves reared like mountains, shattering themselves against the black Betha's hull. The air burned with salt and lightning, ropes whipped like serpents in the wind. Through it all, Davos held the tiller with white-knuckled hands, shouting orders that were torn from his mouth by the roar of the sea. The men fought like madmen, bailing, tying, cursing. Yet it was not mere storm that beset them. The wind had a will of its own, and in the heart of every wave gleamed a strange green light. Davos's eyes searched the chaos. Then he saw her again, standing upon the waves, the pale woman, her robes streaming behind her like banners of smoke. Her face shone with an otherworldly calm, untouched by the fury around her. "Strike sail!" Davos bellowed. "Lower it now!" Corwin wrestled with the lines, shouting, "She's calling to the sea itself, Captain!" As if in answer, the water rose higher still, swirling around her form like a living wall. Her voice echoed through the storm, a sound like steel scraping against stone, yet filled with sorrow. "From fire I was born, from sea I was carried. Shall I wander unbound forever?" "Gods save us," muttered one of the younger men, crossing himself. "She's a spirit, a drowned queen." "Hold steady," Davos roared, though his heart quailed. "She's wind and shadow. She can't harm what she cannot touch." But he was wrong. A bolt of green lightning split the sky, and where it struck the water, a great shape broke the surface, scaled, black, and vast. For an instant, Davos thought it was a whale breaching, but then he saw wings, enormous, ragged wings of dark membrane unfurled against the rain. The creature rose, shrieking, and fire, green fire, spilled from its jaws. The men fell to their knees in terror. Corwin's voice was barely a whisper. "A dragon. She's called a dragon from the deep." Davos could not answer. The beast wheeled once, its eyes burning like twin suns, and dove again into the waves, vanishing beneath them. The woman turned her gaze upon Davos. Though her mouth did not move, her voice filled his mind. "Smuggler, you bore me through storm and steel. Will you bear me again?" He shook his head, drenched and trembling. "I've done my part. Leave me be." The ship lurched violently, as though struck by an unseen hand. Wood splintered, men screamed, water poured across the deck. "You cannot flee the fire that sails with you," she said. "The sea remembers its debt." And with that, she vanished, the light winking out as suddenly as it had come. The storm broke soon after. The sea fell still. Clouds shredded to reveal a gray and silent dawn. The black Betha drifted like a corpse upon the water. Corwin lay slumped against the mast, gasping. "Tell me that was a dream." Davos looked to the horizon, where the last shimmer of green fire faded into mist. "It was no dream," he said quietly. "The damage was grave. The mainsail torn, half the food lost, and 3 men gone to the depths. But somehow, the ship still floated. Davos ordered what repairs they could manage and turned her toward the nearest port, Gulltown, 2 days' sail if the wind held. The crew moved in haunted silence, as though afraid to wake whatever spirits lingered beneath the waves. Davos himself could not rest. The pale woman's words echoed in his skull. "You cannot flee the fire that sails with you." That night, as the men slept where they fell, Davos sat alone upon the deck, his lantern guttering in the cold air. He looked down at his hands, scarred, strong, once steady, and thought of the life he had built from nothing. He had smuggled onions and wine, not curses. He had carried secrets, not spirits. So why him? Why this? He reached into his coat and drew out a coin pouch, his payment from the Meister at Dragonstone. He loosened the string, spilling the gold into his palm. But when the lantern light struck it, his breath caught. Each coin's surface gleamed faintly green, like metal heated from within. He touched one, and it burned his skin. Cursing, he flung the pouch overboard. It vanished into the sea with a quiet splash, and for a heartbeat he thought he heard laughter. Faint, distant, and female. The next day dawned calm. The men took heart again, though none spoke of what had happened. By noon, the outline of Gulltown appeared, its harbor ringed with white sails and gray towers. Relief swept through the crew. "Land!" cried Corwin. "By all the gods, land!" Davos gave a weary smile. We'll take what coin we can, sell the cargo that's left, and get new rigging. After that, no more cursed voyages. But fate had other plans. As they entered the harbor, bells began to ring from the watchtowers. Men ran along the docks, pointing. Davos frowned. They're sounding the alarm. For what? A harbor guard shouted from shore, his voice barely carrying across the water. Turn back! The sea's aflame. Davos turned and saw it. Behind them, the surface of the narrow sea had begun to glow, bright as molten glass. The glow spread, a wave of fire racing toward the port. By the Seven, Corwin breathed. She's followed us. Davos's instincts took hold. Cut the ropes. Back her out. Now! The men moved in panic, casting off lines, oars splashing. But it was too late. The wave of green fire reached the harbor mouth and burst upward, a column of flame that painted the sky in emerald light. The ships nearest the shore caught at once, their masts blazing. Screams rose from the docks. The Black Betha rocked violently, heat searing their faces even at a distance. Then, from within the heart of the fire, wings unfurled, vast, terrible, and bright as a forge. The same dragon that had risen from the storm soared into the sky, its scales glinting like emerald glass. Upon its back, for a fleeting instant, Davos saw her, the pale woman, hair streaming, her eyes fixed upon him. Mother of mercy, Corwin whispered. She rides it. The dragon circled once above the harbor, then vanished into the clouds, leaving ruin in its wake. The fire upon the water died as quickly as it had come, though the ships burned still. When silence fell, only the crackle of charred wood remained. Davos stood unmoving, his heart pounding like a drum. She's bound to me, he said at last, barely above a whisper. The fire won't rest until I end it. Corwin looked at him, fear and loyalty warring in his eyes. And how in the seven hells do you end fire, Captain? Davos turned toward the west, toward Dragonstone, now hidden beyond the horizon. By going back to where it began. He gripped the tiller, his decision hardening like iron. We make ready. At dawn, we sail for Dragonstone. And though the men groaned and cursed, none dared refuse him, for all of them had seen the sea burn. As night fell over the smoking harbor, Davos stood alone at the bow, watching the horizon. The stars above were bright and cold, but in the depths below, faint sparks of green still glimmered, the remnants of a fire that would not die. He closed his eyes, and her voice came again, soft as a whisper of flame. You carried me once. You will carry me always. And Davos Seaworth, smuggler, sailor, and unwilling herald of ancient fire, knew that his true voyage had only just begun. The dawn broke red upon the water as the Black Betha left the smoking harbor of Gulltown behind. The air still reeked of char and salt, and the gulls wheeled above the wrecks of burned ships, crying their hunger to the morning wind. No harbor master stopped them, no patrol hailed their name. The city's watchmen were too busy counting their dead. Davos stood at the prow, his cloak snapping in the breeze, his eyes set westward. Dragonstone waited beyond the horizon, dark, secretive, and heavy with the fire he had loosed. The men behind him worked in uneasy silence. They had seen the sea burn. No man forgot such a sight. Some whispered prayers to the Seven, others to the drowned god. For whatever powers ruled the deep, it seemed none were absent from this voyage. Corwin came to stand beside him. The big man's beard was matted with salt, his eyes hollow with lack of sleep. You mean to go back to that cursed rock, Captain? Aye, Davos said, his voice low. It began there. It ends there. Corwin grunted. And if she's waiting, then I'll face her. If the sea claims me, so be it." The crew heard him and said no more. They trusted their captain, though dread hung heavy among them. All that day they sailed through calm waters. The wind was steady, the sky bright, yet beneath the surface, strange shadows moved. At times, Davos could swear he saw something vast sliding through the depths beside them, a shape too long to be fish, too silent to be whale. At sunset, the wind died. The ship drifted, sails slack, upon a mirror sea. The crew grew restless, muttering. Then the first voice began to sing. It came from nowhere and everywhere, a woman's voice, sweet as the lull of waves, sad as a widow's prayer. The melody twined around them like smoke, soft yet clear. Corwin clutched his amulet. "Seven, save us. She's here again." "No," Davos said, straining to listen. "This is different." The song grew stronger, carrying words none understood. The men stood entranced, staring into the darkening sea. Then something broke the surface. A hand, pale and glistening, followed by another and another. Shapes rose from the depths, women with hair like weed, skin pale as pearls, eyes glowing faintly green. Dozens of them. They circled the ship, their song rising in eerie harmony. "Mermaids," whispered one of the sailors. "The drowned maidens of the deep." But Davos knew better. These were not the fair creatures of sailor tales. Their smiles were too sharp, their beauty too cold. They were drawn by the fire that had touched his ship. By her. "Back!" Davos roared. "Back, damn you all! Don't meet their eyes!" But it was too late. One sailor leaned over the rail, reaching for a hand that beckoned to him from below. The maiden smiled and pulled him into the sea. His scream lasted only a heartbeat before the water closed over his head. The others backed away, crossing themselves, muttering prayers. The song continued, softer now, almost tender. Davos felt it pulling at him, a warmth spreading through his chest. For an instant, he saw her, the pale woman, standing among them beneath the waves, her hair fanning like silk. She lifted her hand, and the sea began to glow faintly, green and gold. The ship rocked, though there was no wind. Then, from the deep, came a sound like the groan of stone breaking, a low, rumbling note that made the timbers tremble. The song ceased, the water split. From the depths rose the dragon once more, vast and terrible, its wings dragging up a mountain of spray. Its eyes blazed with molten light, steam hissed from its nostrils. The sea maidens vanished into foam as the beast lifted its head and loosed a roar that split the heavens. The men fell to their knees in terror. "Seven, save us," cried Corwin. But Davos stood unmoving, his hair whipped by the wind. "It's her beast," he said. "It comes at her call." The dragon hovered above the water, wings beating slow and heavy. For a moment, its gaze locked on Davos. Then it turned westward, toward the horizon. "Follow it," Davos ordered. Corwin gaped at him. "Follow it! Captain, are you mad?" "Would you rather it follow us?" Davos barked. "Hoist the sail, follow its course." And so they did. The dragon flew low over the water, a shadow of fire and smoke, leading them through the night. Each beat of its wings stirred the waves, each flare of its breath painted the sea green. By dawn, Dragonstone loomed ahead, black and jagged, the sky above it streaked with ash. The dragon circled once, then vanished into the mountain's heart. The crew looked to Davos in silent dread. He nodded grimly. "We go ashore." They lowered a skiff and rowed toward the beach of black sand. The air was hot, thick with the stench of sulfur. Ash drifted from the cliffs like snow. At the foot of the path stood a figure waiting, tall, cloaked in gray, his face hidden. Davos recognized the chain at his neck. Maester Kelthar. The man lifted his hood. His face was older, thinner, the eyes sunken deep. I knew you would return. You sent me to sea with a curse, Davos said. Now it's followed me back. Kelthar nodded. The fire you carried was meant to sleep, but the sea woke her. You were chosen, Ser Davos, not by us, but by her. I'm no Sir, Davos growled, and I want no part in your sorcery. It matters little what you want, the Maester said softly. The bond is forged. You carried her across the storm. You bear her mark now. He gestured to Davos's left hand. Davos looked down and froze. Upon his skin, faint lines glowed beneath the surface, green and gold, tracing the shape of scales. She has named you her herald, Kelthar said. The dragon's flame obeys her, and through her, you. I never asked for this, Davos said hoarsely. Tell me how to end it. Kelthar's expression was grim. End it? Fire does not end, smuggler. It consumes or it fades. If you would live, you must take her flame back into the sea, to the place where she was first forged. Only there can the bond be broken. And where's that? Davos asked. The Maester turned toward the horizon where the sea met the sky. The smoking sea, he said. Valyria. The word fell like a stone into silence. Even the wind seemed to falter. Valyria's death, Corwin muttered. No man sails there and returns. Davos's jaw tightened. Then I'll be the first. If that's where this ends, so be it. Kelthar inclined his head. You are braver than most knights. Or more foolish. He handed Davos a small vial, stoppered with wax. Inside flickered a single spark of green flame. Her heart fire, the Maester said. She will follow it. Guard it well, and pray she reaches you before her dragon does. Davos took it, the glass warm in his palm. When he turned back toward the sea, the Black Betha waited offshore, her black hull gleaming like obsidian. The waves lapped gently at the sand, though the air hummed faintly, as if the island itself were breathing. He looked once more at the Maester. If I don't return, you won't, Kelthar said softly, but perhaps the world will burn a little slower for it. Davos climbed into the skiff. As the oars bit the water, he looked back only once, at the dark mountain, the faint smoke rising from its peak, and the whisper of wings high above. The journey was set. The sea stretched before him, vast, deadly, and waiting. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the ruins of Valyria smoldered still, their fires calling to the one who bore her flame. Davos Seaworth, smuggler turned unwilling messenger of the old world's wrath, gripped the vial tight and whispered to the waves, one last voyage then, one last debt to pay. The sea did not answer, but the wind rose behind him, carrying a faint voice, her voice, that said only, I am coming. The days that followed were long and restless. The Black Betha creaked and groaned as she cut across the open sea, westward still, toward the place sailors named only in whispers, the Smoking Sea. Davos stood at the helm each dawn and dusk, watching the horizon, knowing full well that no man of Westeros had seen those waters and returned whole. Yet there was no turning back. The vial the Maester had given him glowed faintly in the night. The heart fire, he'd called it. Davos kept it close, bound by cord to the chain around his neck. It gave no warmth, but it pulsed softly, like the beat of a living heart. The men noticed it soon enough. They avoided looking at it, as if the light might draw their souls from their bodies. Captain, Corwin said one evening as they ate hard bread on deck, we've no charts for what lies ahead. The air grows foul, the stars dim. It's as if we're sailing off the edge of the world. Maybe we are, Davos said quietly, but we'll not stop till the fire's quenched. Corwin grunted, shaking his head. You've gone mad, Captain. No gold's worth this. This isn't about gold, Davos said. Not anymore. By the fourth day, the sea began to change. The waters grew darker, thicker, a murky gray that clung to the ship's sides like oil. The air stank of brimstone, and the wind carried a strange, mournful hum. Even the gulls had vanished. At night, the sea glowed faintly from below, not blue or green, but red, like embers smoldering beneath glass. The crew took to sleeping on deck rather than below, too fearful of what might stir beneath them. Then came the voices. Soft at first, whispers that seemed to rise from the water itself. They spoke no words the men could understand, but their tone was pleading, sorrowful. The crew crossed themselves and muttered prayers. Davos listened in silence, feeling the pull of something vast beneath the ship. On the seventh night, the wind died altogether. The sea lay flat and still, a black mirror reflecting the dull glow of the heart fire against Davos's chest. He felt the weight of 100 eyes watching from below. Then, without warning, the stillness broke. The ship shuddered violently, the deck pitching as though struck from beneath. A geyser of boiling water erupted off the port bow, followed by another and another, the air filled with steam. "Gods!" Corwin shouted. "She's boiling us alive!" Davos looked down and saw that the sea itself was bubbling, great pockets of heat bursting from below. A foul, sulphurous smoke rose around them, stinging their eyes. "Row," Davos ordered. "Row, or we'll cook where we float." But even as they struggled to move, a new sound reached them. A low rumble from the depths, deep and steady, like a heartbeat. Then, in the distance, something vast broke the surface. Not a ship, nor any creature known to man. It was a ruin, a tower of black stone, jagged and leaning, its sides glowing faintly red. More followed, half-sunken spires, crumbled domes, the bones of a city drowned in ash. "Valyria," Corwin breathed. "Seven, save us. It's real." They drifted among the ruins, the sea hissing where molten fissures split the surface. The air shimmered with heat. Every stone around them seemed to hum with a strange energy, as if alive. And then Davos felt it, a tug deep in his chest, pulling toward the largest ruin ahead. The vial of heartfire pulsed brighter, answering something unseen. "She's here," he murmured. The men followed his gaze, and fear spread through them like frost. "We can't go closer, Captain," said one. "This place isn't for the living." Davos turned to them, his face drawn but steady. "You've followed me through storm and flame. One more league, and you're free. After that, you can turn the ship and sail for home. I'll finish this alone if I must." Corwin spat into the sea. "You'll not go alone, Captain. If we're damned, we'll be damned together." They took up the oars, the silence broken only by the creak of wood and the hiss of the sea. The ruins loomed high on either side, shapes of dragons carved in stone, their wings melted and fused. Then the fog came, thick, gray, reeking of ash. Through it, faint lights began to flicker, moving slowly like lanterns held by unseen hands. "Spirits," whispered one man. "Valyrian ghosts." "No ghosts," came a voice from the fog, a man's voice, smooth and clear. Figures appeared on the ruined dock, cloaked in gray and crimson. At their head stood Caleros, the Lycene alchemist. His pale eyes gleamed. "I told you we would meet again, smuggler." Davos's hand went to his dagger. "You brought this curse to the world, Caleros. I mean to end it." The Lycene smiled. "End it? You misunderstand. She cannot be ended. She can only be restored. The fire you carry belongs to her, her heart, her soul. Return it, and she will be whole again. I've seen what your restoration brings, Davos said. Death, flame, and ruin. Kaliros spread his arms. The old powers demand their due. You were chosen as her vessel. You cannot fight what's written in fire. A shadow moved behind him, the pale woman, her form faintly luminous, her eyes burning with that same green fire. She looked upon Davos not with hatred, but with longing. Come, she said softly. You carried me once. Carry me home. The vial burned hot against his chest. The light within flared, and the ship groaned as if alive. Captain, Corwin cried. The water's rising. Indeed, the sea around them had begun to churn. Waves struck the hull from all sides, dragging them toward the shore where the woman stood. Davos tore the vial from his neck, its light blazing. If I give this to her, she'll burn the world. And if you don't, Kaliros said calmly, she will burn you. Davos hesitated, only for a heartbeat. Then he hurled the vial into the sea. It struck the water and vanished with a hiss. The pale woman screamed, her voice a shattering note that split the air. The ruins trembled, cracks racing through the stone. Kaliros staggered back, eyes wide in horror. No, fool, you've doomed us all. The sea exploded. Fire and water rose as one, swallowing the ruins in a storm of molten light. The Black Beatha was flung backward, her mast snapping. Davos was thrown into the sea, the heat searing his skin. As he sank, he saw the pale woman descending too, her arms reaching out, her eyes no longer green but gold, soft, human. She smiled, a strange, peaceful smile. Then the light consumed her, and the sea went black. When Davos awoke, he lay upon a shattered piece of hull, drifting upon calm water. The air was cool again, the sky clear. The ruins of Valyria smoked faintly on the horizon, sinking slowly beneath the waves. Corwin's voice came weakly from nearby. Captain? Davos turned. His friend clung to another plank, battered but alive. She's gone, Davos said softly. The fire's gone. Yet as he spoke, he felt a faint warmth on his chest. Looking down, he saw a small mark upon his skin, the faint outline of a dragon's eye, glowing for just a moment before fading away. He looked once more toward the horizon, where the smoke of the old world curled into the sky, and whispered a prayer. The sea was calm, the wind gentle, but in its depths, far below the reach of any man, a single spark still burned, waiting. When the dawn rose after the ruin of Valyria, it came pale and gray, as if the heavens themselves had wearied of fire. The Black Beatha drifted upon a still and silent sea, her hull half charred, her mast gone. Only 6 of Davos's men remained, clinging to life as if it might slip away with the tide. Smoke hung in the air like ghosts, and in it the faint scent of brimstone lingered, the breath of what they had awoken and what had sunk once more. Davos sat upon the deck, his back to the broken rail, his eyes fixed upon the endless horizon. The sea that had boiled only a day before was now calm as glass, yet he felt no peace in its stillness. The fire might have vanished beneath the waves, but its memory burned within him still. He touched his chest where the mark had glowed, half expecting it to flare again. It did not, but the skin there was warm, too warm. Corwin hobbled across the deck, his left arm bound in cloth. He dropped beside Davos, sighing heavily. You should sleep, Captain. You've not closed your eyes since the sea went quiet. Davos shook his head. If I close my eyes, I'll see it all again. The dragon, the fire, the sea swallowing itself. Corwin spat into the water. Aye, and I'll see her face. That ghost woman. She looked almost grateful. When it ended, Davos said nothing. Grateful was not the word he would use, though there had been peace in her final gaze, a peace that made his stomach twist with guilt. He had ended her, but at what cost? The sun climbed higher, and the sea shimmered faintly, red and gold. The men murmured prayers as they worked, patching the deck as best they could, bailing the bilge. They had little food left, less water, and no mast to catch the wind. They were adrift, and in the far distance, no sails, no shore. It was near noon when the sea began to move again, not with wind but with something beneath, a slow swell, steady and rhythmic, the same heartbeat he had felt before. "Not again," Corwin whispered. "Tell me it's not her." Davos rose, peering over the rail. The water was dark, but not empty. Shapes moved beneath the surface, too large, too deliberate. Then, from the depths, came the faint glow of green fire. "She's gone," Davos said aloud, as if to convince himself. "I saw her burn." The glow grew brighter, spreading in all directions. The men gathered near the bow, fear tightening their faces. "What in the seven hells?" one began. The sea erupted. A column of light burst upward, blindingly bright, and from it emerged a great scaled shape, not the dragon that had followed them before, but smaller, sleeker, its wings tattered and half-formed. It circled the wreck once, its cry echoing like the sound of molten stone breaking apart. Then it descended, landing upon the shattered mast. Its eyes, green and knowing, fixed on Davos. The men fell back, some to their knees. "The beast lives," Corwin breathed. "No," Davos said softly. "Not the same beast. A hatchling." The creature tilted its head, as if hearing him. It was young, no longer than a longboat, but its scales gleamed with the same faint light that had marked his skin. When it opened its mouth, a thin stream of smoke escaped, smelling faintly of salt and fire. Davos's pulse quickened. "It followed her," he murmured. "The fire didn't die with her. It changed." He stepped forward, slow and cautious. "Easy now," he said. "We're no threat." The dragon watched him, unblinking. For a moment, all sound faded. Only the soft lap of the sea remained. Then, with a low growl, it bowed its head. Corwin swore under his breath. "It knows you." Davos stared, hardly breathing. The mark upon his chest burned faintly again, and in his mind, for the first time since the storm, he heard her voice. "You carried me once. Carry my child." He staggered back, clutching his chest. "No, no more of this. I've done my part." The dragon spread its wings, the gust knocking the men from their feet. Then it leapt skyward, vanishing into the clouds with a single powerful stroke. For a long while, none spoke. The crew stood silent, staring at the empty sky. Then Corwin said softly, "It's gone." Davos nodded, though he knew it was not gone at all. It had left because it did not need him yet. 2 days passed. They rigged a makeshift sail from torn canvas and drifted north, carried by a sluggish current. The food dwindled, and thirst gnawed at their throats. Still, they pressed on. The world was strangely quiet, as though holding its breath. On the third night, the horizon ahead flickered with light. Not fire, but lanterns. A ship. Davos blinked salt from his eyes. By the gods, signal them. They lit torches and waved them high. The distant ship altered course and drew near, her banners black and red, the colors of Dragonstone. When she came alongside, Davos could read her name, the Fury of Driftmark. A voice called across the water. "Who sails there?" "Davos Seaworth," he shouted. "Of Dragonstone." There was a pause, then a startled reply. "The Onion Knight? They said you were dead." Davos almost laughed. "They've said that before." They were brought aboard and given water, food, and bandages. The captain, a young Valyrian with silver hair, bowed his head. "You've come from the west?" "Aye," Davos said, "further than any man should." "Then you've seen it," the young man said. "The fires in the deep, they say Valyria burns again." Davos said nothing, though the memory of the dragon's eyes burned in his mind. "Aye," he said at last, "something stirs there, something old." When they reached Dragonstone a fortnight later, word of his return spread swiftly. Maester Kelthar met him at the dock, pale and weary. "You went where no man was meant to go," the Maester said, "and yet you live. Tell me what you found." Davos met his gaze. "I found your fire, Maester, and I drowned it." The old man studied him, eyes narrowing. "Did you?" Davos's hand went unconsciously to his chest. "It's gone." Kelthar's gaze dropped to the faint glow that shimmered there, hidden beneath Davos's tunic. He sighed. "No, Sir Davos. The fire never leaves its bearer. You have only changed its shape." He turned away, his voice low. "Pray it does not one day change yours." That night, as Davos lay in a chamber overlooking the sea, he dreamed of wings. The wind howled outside, and when he woke before dawn, the chamber was cold. He stepped to the window. Far out over the waves, a dark shape wheeled through the sky, small, swift, vanishing into the clouds. He watched until the horizon swallowed it whole. "Carry my child," the voice whispered once more in his mind, soft as the sea's sigh. Davos clenched his hands, his heart heavy with dread and wonder alike. He was no longer merely a smuggler, nor a knight. The fire of old Valyria lived within him now, bound not by gold or chains, but by destiny. And though the sea lay calm beneath the morning sun, Davos Seaworth knew that one day soon, both fire and storm would come for him again, and the world would tremble at their meeting. Weeks passed, and the days upon Dragonstone lengthened with uneasy calm. The Maester said the air itself had changed since Davos's return, the wind warmer, the tides unsteady. Some nights the castle stones glowed faintly red as though remembering old fire. The small folk whispered of dragons in the sky, of shadows that glimmered with light instead of dark. Davos said nothing. He kept to himself, walking the cliffs by day, sleepless by night. He could still feel it, the pulse beneath his ribs, faint but steady, like a heartbeat that was not his own. At times it quickened when he looked upon the sea, as if something in the deep called to it. Corwin had taken ship for Driftmark, unwilling to linger near the cursed island. Of the crew that survived Valyria, only 2 remained, loyal, silent men who followed Davos more from superstition than friendship now. They feared him, though he bore no weapon but his will. One evening, as the sky bled crimson over the waves, Davos stood on the parapet, watching the horizon. The memory of that hatchling haunted him. A creature born of fire, carried by the sea, his burden and his mark. "You'll wear a hole in the stone, Ser Davos." He turned. Maester Kelthar stood beside him, his cloak drawn tight against the wind. His face was pale, the skin drawn taut across the bones. The fires of Dragonstone had aged him faster than time. "You've been avoiding me," the Maester said. "I've been avoiding everyone," Davos replied. "There's naught I can give them but unease." "Perhaps unease is what keeps them safe," Kelthar said. "The old powers stir again, and men must remember fear." Davos's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. "You told me drowning the fire would end it." The Maester hesitated. It ended her, not what she carried. Davos's hand clenched on the stone. "Then what?" in the name of all 7 hells, does it want from me?" Kelthar looked toward the west, where the sea dimmed into mist. To be reborn, perhaps. Fire is never content to rest in ashes. He withdrew a small scroll from his sleeve and offered it to Davos. The wax seal bore the sigil of House Targaryen. "A raven came from King's Landing. Word has reached the court that you returned from the ruins. The hand would speak with you." Davos frowned. "I've no love for court games." "The hand is Lord Jon Connington," Kelthar said. "And his master is Aerys Targaryen, who dreams again of dragons. They will want to know what you found." "Then they'll have to be content with silence," Davos said. "The less men speak of fire, the less likely they are to burn." But Kelthar's eyes were shrewd. "You fear what you carry. You should. The realm will soon thirst for what burns within you." That night, Davos packed his few belongings, the salt-stained cloak, a dagger, and a pouch of coin. He left the castle before dawn, slipping past the sleeping guards. He took a small fishing skiff and rowed eastward, away from Dragonstone's shadow. For a time, the sea was calm. The rising sun painted the water gold, and he allowed himself to breathe. Yet as the island shrank behind him, he heard it again, a faint cry high above, half wind, half roar. He shaded his eyes. There, far off among the clouds, a dark shape wheeled. Wings stretched wide against the morning light. Not large, not yet, but growing. The hatchling had found him again. He cursed under his breath. 7 save me. Can a man never outrun his own sins? He rowed harder, sweat stinging his eyes until his arms burned. But the shadow followed, keeping its distance, circling like a hawk watching prey. By evening, the wind turned cold. He saw land ahead, a narrow island of black rock crowned with ruins. He steered toward it, his arms trembling with exhaustion. The skiff scraped against stone, and he stumbled ashore. The place was empty save for seabirds and bones. The ruins might once have been a watchtower, but only a single arch remained standing. Beneath it, the wind keened like a voice in pain. Davos built a small fire of driftwood and sat beside it, staring into the flames. For the first time since Valyria, he felt peace. The sea murmured softly, the sky was clear, and the dragon's shadow was nowhere to be seen. He might have slept, had the ground not begun to tremble. The fire flickered, and a faint heat rose from beneath the rock. Davos stood, drawing his dagger, a useless gesture, yet it steadied his hand. From the darkness of the sea came the sound of wings. The hatchling landed upon the beach, scattering ash and sand. Its eyes burned like twin emeralds, its scales black as wet stone. It had grown since he last saw it, longer now, stronger, its wings broad enough to blot the moonlight. Davos backed away, heart hammering. "You've no business with me, beast. Go back to the deep where you belong." The dragon tilted its head, studying him. Then, to his horror, it lowered itself to the ground, folding its wings, not as a predator ready to strike, but as a hound awaiting command. A voice filled the air, soft as breath, yet clear as bells. "You carried my fire, and it lives." He spun about, though he already knew the voice. She stood upon the shore beyond the dragon, pale as moonlight, clothed not in flame but in mist. Her eyes no longer burned green, but gold, human, sorrowful. "You should be dead," Davos said. "I was," she answered. "But fire is patient. When you cast my heart into the sea, you gave it life anew. It lives through you." He felt the mark on his chest throb with heat. "Take it back then. Take it and leave me." She stepped closer, the waves parting around her feet. "Would you give it freely?" If it ends this curse, then look upon me." He forced himself to meet her gaze. The gold of her eyes deepened, turning red, then green, then gold again, the colors of fire seen through glass. "You mistake this for a curse," she whispered. "But it is a gift. The world will burn again, and you will light its pyre." "I'll see it drowned first," he said. Her smile was sad. "Then drown with it." The dragon roared, the force of its cry knocking him backward. The earth split, flame spilling through the cracks. Davos scrambled to his feet, his dagger raised, though it was like raising a twig against a storm. She lifted her hand, and the air itself ignited. Yet the flame did not touch him. It swirled around him, wrapping him in a halo of light that burned but did not consume. The mark upon his chest flared, brighter and brighter, until the world was nothing but fire. When the light dimmed, she was gone. The beach was silent once more, save for the hiss of cooling stone. The dragon had vanished with her. Davos fell to his knees, gasping. He tore open his tunic, expecting to see the mark still glowing. But there was nothing, only bare skin, scarred and pale. The fire within him was gone. He stared at the waves, numb. The sea lapped quietly against the shore, as if nothing had happened. Then, faint and far away, he saw a flicker on the horizon, a streak of green fire rising into the night sky. She was free. Davos sank down upon the sand, the exhaustion of years pressing upon him. "So be it," he whispered. "Let the fire go where it will. I'm done chasing ghosts." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of salt and ash. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the world stirred, kingdoms unknowing, lords dreaming of dragons, and Davos Seaworth, alone upon a barren shore, closed his eyes and listened to the sea, wondering if any man could truly smother the fire once loosed upon it. The tide carried the wreckage of the Black Beatha north for days before it was swallowed by the sea. But Davos Seaworth endured. He drifted between fevered sleep and waking dreams upon that desolate isle, his mind full of fire and whispers. The voice that had haunted him through storm and shadow was gone now, and yet, in its absence, he felt a strange emptiness, as though some part of him had been torn away. When at last he rose, the sun was low, and the world smelled of salt and smoke. His limbs ached, his lips cracked, but life still clung stubbornly to him. He found a half-buried cask along the shore, washed up from some doomed ship. Brine-soaked water within, foul but drinkable. He drank deeply, then turned his gaze to the horizon. The faint green fire he had seen the night before was gone. Only calm waters stretched before him, broken by the flight of gulls and the shimmer of morning light. Yet something in the air had changed, a heaviness, a waiting. The world itself seemed to hold its breath. By midday, he had built a small raft from driftwood and rope, the work of a man with nothing left but stubbornness. He had no map, no compass, only the sea's will to guide him. Still, the wind shifted east, and he took it as a sign. The raft creaked as he set out once more, the waves lifting him toward the open water. He sailed for 2 days before he saw another ship, a merchant carrack from Pentos, fat and slow upon the current. They took him aboard, fed him, and listened with wide eyes as he spoke of storms and fire, though he spared them the truth of what had truly happened. Some tales were not meant for mortal ears. When they reached King's Landing weeks later, the city was as loud and filthy as he remembered. But now, beneath the din of hammers and bells, he heard a new note: rumor. The court, it seemed, burned with talk of omens and dragons. Fishermen swore they'd seen wings in the smoke above the narrow sea. Sailors whispered of ships vanishing in waters that glowed at night. He found an inn near the harbor and took a small room. The coin in his pouch was enough for a few nights of food and quiet, yet sleep would not come. The city felt uneasy, the air thick, restless. On the second night, a messenger came. The boy's cloak bore the crimson and gold sigil of the hand. Ser Davos Seaworth. Just Davos, he said wearily. The hand of the king requests your presence at the Red Keep, at once. He almost refused, but something in the boy's frightened eyes stopped him. He followed without a word. The Red Keep loomed above the city like a shadowed crown. He was brought through torchlit halls to the Tower of the Hand, where Lord John Connington waited. The Hand was younger than rumor painted him. Proud, hawk-faced, his silver hair bound back with a strip of crimson cloth. Davos Seaworth, Connington said, smuggler, knight, survivor of storms. The king hears you've returned from the ruins. Davos bowed stiffly. If that's what men are saying, I can't stop them. Connington gestured him forward. Tell me what you saw. Every man we've sent to those waters has perished. Yet you came back. Davos hesitated. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. The hand's eyes were cold. Try me. So Davos told him of the pale woman, the fire that walked, the dragon that rose from the waves. He spoke of Valyria's ruins, of the green fire, and the sea boiling beneath them. When he finished, Connington's face was unreadable. At last, the hand said, The king dreams of dragons reborn. You speak of fire that lives and breathes. Tell me, Davos, do you think what you saw was the work of gods or of men? Neither, Davos said. It was the sea's vengeance for what men tried to steal from it. Connington regarded him in silence, then poured a cup of wine and handed it over. The king will want to see you tomorrow at dawn. Rest well. It may be your last peaceful night. Davos drank, though the wine tasted bitter as blood. That night, he dreamed again. The sea was dark, and from its depths rose not one dragon but many, shapes of flame and smoke circling a tower of black glass. Upon its peak stood the pale woman, her hair blazing like a crown. She lifted her hand, and the dragons bowed. Then she turned her gaze upon him. You drowned my fire, she said. Now you will feed it. He woke with a cry, the sheets damp with sweat. A faint warmth pulsed in his chest. The mark he thought gone had returned, faint but alive. At dawn, he was brought before the king. Aerys Targaryen sat upon the Iron Throne, his hair a tangled silver mane, his fingers twitching upon the armrests. His eyes burned with a mad brightness. So, the smuggler who sailed the smoking sea. I did, Your Grace, Davos said carefully. The king leaned forward. Tell me, did you see my dragons? I saw fire, Davos said, and death. Fire is life, the king hissed. Fire is truth. It cleanses, it remembers. He rose from the throne, his voice rising with him. The dragons are not gone. They sleep in the bones of the world. Men like you, men who dare, you wake them. The hall murmured uneasily, courtiers exchanging glances. The king's voice dropped to a whisper. Tell me where the fire burns now, Davos Seaworth. Tell me where it waits. Davos's pulse thundered in his ears. The mark upon his chest flared again, unseen beneath his tunic. He bowed his head. If it waits anywhere, Your Grace, it waits in men's hearts, not in stone. Aerys's eyes narrowed. Lies, he said softly. You carry it with you. I can smell it. The hand stepped forward. Majesty, he's but a sailor. If he carries aught of the old fire, it should be studied, not wasted. Studied? The king spat. No, purified. He raised his hand, gesturing to the pyromancers who lingered near the throne. Take him, I would see if he burns. Guards seized Davos by the arms. Panic surged in his chest, and with it came heat, sharp, fierce, rising like the tide. The air around him shimmered. The guards shouted, stumbling back. Flames burst from the floor, not red, but green. The courtiers screamed. The king laughed, wild and shrill. Yes, there it is! The fire remembers! Davos tore free, the fire swirling around him, burning nothing he touched. His vision blurred with light and smoke. He ran, through the hall, past the shocked guards, into the open air. The red keep behind him glowed faintly, its stones slick with emerald light. He fled down to the docks, where the sea waited dark and silent. The mark upon his chest throbbed, the fire within him wild and untamed. He looked once toward the city, toward the mad king and his crimson court, and then toward the sea. Fire and sea, he whispered, one always calls the other. And with that, he leapt into the black water. The sea swallowed him whole, cold and endless. For a moment, he felt nothing. Then the heat surged again, and he sank, deeper and deeper, until the world above was only a memory. In the dark, he saw her waiting, the pale woman, her golden eyes soft with sorrow. You were never meant for land, Davos Seaworth, she said. You are mine, and the sea keeps what it claims. The fire within him blazed one final time, and the depths glowed green. When the light faded, the sea was calm once more. But far to the east, where the ruins of Valyria smoldered still, a faint cry rose. The sound of wings, the echo of something newly born. No one in King's Landing knew what became of Davos Seaworth. Some said he burned upon the pyromancer's altar, consumed by the very fire he had carried. Others swore they saw him leap from the cliffs of the Red Keep into the bay, swallowed by black waters. Sailors spoke of strange lights upon the sea that night, green and gold, flickering beneath the waves like the breath of dragons long dead. Weeks passed. The court forgot him, as it forgets all men without titles or power. But along the narrow sea, whispers spread. Fishermen glimpsed a ghostly ship gliding through the mist, black-hulled, tattered-sailed, and crewed by no living men. Some claimed it bore the banner of a crowned onion. Others said it flew no flag at all. They called it the Smuggler's Shadow, and it sailed where storms gathered, leaving only calm behind. In the dark belly of that ghost ship, a man stirred. His eyes opened to a dim green light, faint, pulsing, alive. Davos Seaworth drew breath once more. He lay upon damp boards, the air thick with salt. His body ached, but he was whole. When he sat up, he found himself alone. The ship rocked gently, her sails slack, her timbers groaning softly. He rose unsteadily, gripping the railing, and looked upon the sea. It stretched endless and silent, lit by a moon half veiled by cloud. The water shimmered faintly with that same strange glow, green as wildfire, soft as starlight. "Am I dead?" he murmured. A voice answered, carried upon the wind. "Would it matter if you were?" He turned sharply. She stood at the stern, pale as frost, her hair floating like smoke. The woman he had drowned in the fires of Valyria, reborn again from the deep. Yet she was changed. The fire that had once burned within her seemed gentler now, her eyes not green but gray, the color of ash. "You," Davos said, his voice hoarse. "I cast you into the sea. You burned. I was fire," she said softly. "Now I am what fire becomes when it cools." He stared at her. "Ash." She nodded. "The world must burn to be remade, but every flame leaves its shadow. You and I are what remains." Davos shook his head. "No, I've had my fill of magic and ghosts. I want no part in your curse." "You cannot flee what's bound by blood and salt," she replied. "The fire within you is mine. The sea carried it back to me through you." He stepped forward. "Then take it and leave me to die." Her gaze softened. "It is not so simple. The fire is no longer a weapon. It is a seed." She raised her hand. Light flared between her fingers, not wild and consuming, but warm, steady, like the glow of a hearth. "It sleeps in the hearts of men now. It will rise again, but not through kings, nor pyromancers, through those who remember the sea's mercy." "I remember no mercy in her," Davos said bitterly. "Only loss." The woman's expression darkened. "Loss is her mercy. The sea takes all things in time, even fire." A wind rose then, cold and salt-sweet. The ship shuddered, and in the distance Davos heard the faint creak of oars. From the mist emerged a fleet, long ships, black and cruel, their sails marked with the kraken of House Greyjoy. "Reavers," he muttered. "Even ghosts cannot sail free of them." "They come for the fire," she said. "The scent of it clings to you still." "And what will you do?" he asked. "What I was born to do," she said simply. "Protect what remains." The longships surrounded them, torches blazing along their decks. A horn sounded, deep, mournful. "Board her!" came a shout. "Seize the ship!" Ironborns swarmed over the rails, axes gleaming, eyes wild. Davos drew his dagger, though he knew it was hopeless. The first of them lunged, and the woman moved. Light erupted from her, searing and pure. The sea roared in answer. Waves rose, curling like the hands of giants, sweeping the raiders from their decks. The air filled with the hiss of steam, the crackle of lightning. Davos shielded his eyes as fire and water danced together, burning without smoke, falling without sound. When the fury ceased, the sea was calm again. No longships remained, only charred planks and drifting ash. Davos lowered his arm slowly. "You've doomed them. They sought to steal what was never theirs," she said. "The sea does not forgive." He looked around at the ruin. "Neither does it forget." For a long moment they stood in silence. Then she spoke again, her voice distant. "The world is changing, Davos Seaworth. The dragons stir in their bones. The kings of men crave their power. Soon they will burn all that stands between them and ruin. You must choose where you stand." "I'm no hero," he said. "No lord. I'm just a sailor who wanted to feed his sons." "Then sail," she said. "Sail far. Carry the tale. Tell them what you saw, what waits beyond the fire. That is how the sea remembers." He hesitated. "And you?" "I go where the flame still sleeps," she said. "South, to the lands where fire was first born. The world must know balance again, or it will drown in its own light." She turned, her form already fading into mist. "When the storm comes again, look for me in its heart." And she was gone. The ship rocked gently, the waves whispering against her hull. The stars burned above like distant embers. Davos stood for a long while, staring into the dark, until the sea itself seemed to whisper her last words. He found the tiller and set his course north, toward the familiar winds of home. The ship obeyed, her sails catching the breath of dawn. Behind him, the water glimmered faintly green, fading as the sun rose. He sailed for many days, alone with the sea and his thoughts. Now and then he caught glimpses of shapes in the sky, wings perhaps, or tricks of the clouds. The world felt vast and young again, as if something ancient stirred beneath its skin. When at last he reached White Harbor, no one knew him. He was thinner, grayer, his beard streaked with silver. yet his eyes still carried that faint reflection of fire. He told no one his true tale. But children who lingered near the docks spoke of an old sailor who would sit at sunset, staring out to sea, whispering to the waves. Sometimes, on calm nights, the fishermen said they saw a light upon the water, a soft, green shimmer that moved like a lantern carried by unseen hands. Those who followed it never returned, and in the deep places of the world, where the sea touches the bones of mountains, something vast stirred and exhaled. Its breath rose through cracks and caverns, through smoke and salt, carrying with it the faint echo of a woman's voice. When fire meets sea, the world begins again. Davos never heard it, though perhaps he felt it, in the warmth that never quite left his chest, in the dreams that showed him dragons flying not to war, but to peace. And so the smuggler sailed on, nameless and unseen, through fog and flame, bound forever to the two forces that ruled the world, the fire that destroys and the sea that remembers. Winter came quietly to the shores of White Harbor. Snow fell in soft veils over the gray sea, and the docks lay empty, but for the gulls that wheeled above the frozen tide. The world seemed at peace, or perhaps only asleep. Yet beneath that silence, the sea still whispered to those who listened, and Davos Seaworth listened better than most. He had made his home in a small cottage near the water, far from the Lord's Hall and its noise. The villagers called him the Gray Sailor, a quiet man who mended nets, sold saltfish, and never spoke of the past. But on stormy nights, when the winds moaned and the waves struck like fists upon the shore, he would wake from uneasy dreams, heart pounding, and feel the old heat flicker faintly beneath his ribs. It had been many years since the fire had claimed him, years of peace, of quiet toil, of pretending that the sea no longer called his name. Yet in the deepest part of him, he knew it was not over. The fire and the sea had not finished their war. One evening, while the sun sank blood red beyond the horizon, a knock came at his door. Davos opened it to find a boy standing in the snow, thin, pale, eyes wide with awe. "Are you the sailor who came back from the smoking sea?" the boy asked breathlessly. Davos frowned. "Who told you that tale?" "My uncle," said the boy. "He's a fisherman. He said you sailed where dragons sleep, and that you saw one wake." Davos's gaze drifted past the boy to the darkening water. "Your uncle should hold his tongue. Some tales are better left untold." "But is it true?" the boy pressed. "Are there still dragons in the deep?" For a long moment, Davos said nothing. Then he knelt, his voice soft. "Aye, lad, there are dragons, but they're not what men think. Some breathe fire, some breathe fear, and some—" He touched his chest lightly. "Burn from within." The boy's eyes shone. "I want to see one." Davos smiled sadly. "You already have. Every time you look at a flame." The boy hesitated, then nodded and ran back into the dusk, leaving Davos alone once more. He watched the sea until darkness fell. Then, with a sigh, he gathered his cloak and lantern and walked down to the water's edge. The tide was low, the waves whispering secrets he could almost understand. "You've been quiet too long," he murmured to the sea. "If you've business with me, speak it plain." The wind shifted, carrying a faint warmth. Far out upon the black water, a glow began to rise, soft at first, then brighter, until the whole horizon shimmered green. Davos felt his heart tighten. "No," he whispered, "not again." But the light grew, and with it came the sound. Wings, vast and slow, beating against the sky. From the heart of the glow emerged a shape, immense, terrible, and beautiful, A dragon, full-grown now, its scales black as obsidian, its eyes molten gold. Davos fell to his knees, lantern tumbling into the surf. The dragon circled once above the bay, its cry echoing through the winter air like the song of a dying star. Then it descended, landing upon the frozen beach with a weight that shook the ground. The heat from its body melted the snow in wide circles. Steam rose in curling tendrils. Davos forced himself to stand. "You've grown," he said hoarsely. The dragon lowered its head. From between its wings stepped a figure, a woman cloaked in gray, her hair pale as frost. Her eyes, once burning, were calm now, deep and sorrowful. "You've lived long, Davos Seaworth," she said. "Longer than most men touched by flame." "You said you were gone," he replied. "You said the fire had ended." "I said the fire had changed," she corrected gently. "It slumbered while the world healed, but now it wakes again. The kingdoms stir, men dream of dragons, of power reborn. And where such dreams grow, so does the fire." He stared at her. "Then you've come to stop it?" "To guide it," she said. "Or to end it if I must. You'll start the war all over again." She shook her head. "War never ended, Smuggler. It only slept, as we did." Davos looked upon her, the pale woman reborn, neither ghost nor goddess, but something between. He saw no madness in her now, only purpose, and behind her, the dragon's eyes burned not with hunger, but with weary wisdom, as if it too longed for rest. "What do you want of me?" he asked. Her gaze softened. "To bear witness. You were the bridge once, between sea and flame, life and death. Be so again. The world will need a man who remembers both. I'm no hero," he said bitterly. "I was a smuggler before the war, and less than that after. What can I do against kings and dragons?" "Live," she said simply, "and remember." A gust of wind tore across the shore. Snow swirled around them, hissing as it met the dragon's heat. Davos closed his eyes against the sting. When he opened them again, the beach was empty. The dragon was gone. So was she. Only a circle of melted snow remained, steaming gently beneath the moonlight. Davos sank to his knees, trembling. The warmth in his chest flared once, then faded, leaving only a faint ache. He knew then that he would not see her again, not in this life. The next morning, the villagers found him asleep upon the shore, the tide lapping at his boots. They carried him home, muttering that the old sailor had finally lost his wits. But when they stripped his cloak, they found a small mark upon his breast, a scar shaped like a dragon's eye, faintly glimmering gold. He lived quietly after that. Seasons came and went. The boy who had once knocked on his door grew into a man, a sailor himself, and often sought the old smuggler's counsel. They would sit by the hearth, the younger listening, the elder speaking softly of tides and storms, of debts owed and fires tamed. And on clear nights, when the sea was calm and the stars shone bright, Davos would walk alone to the edge of the water and look to the east. Sometimes he thought he saw it, a flicker of green in the distance, the glint of wings against the moon. He would smile then, the ghost of a younger man in his face, and whisper, "Still watching, are you?" Then he would turn back toward his cottage, the sea at his back, the fire forever in his heart. And so ended the tale of Davos Seaworth, the smuggler who carried fire across the sea. Some said he died in peace, others that he sailed one last time into the dawn, chasing a light that only he could see. But on certain nights, when the wind blows from the east and the waves shimmer with green fire, sailors swear they hear a voice upon the tide, rough, steady, and kind, calling out through the storm, "Hold fast, lads, The sea remembers, and somewhere beyond the horizon, where fire and water meet, the pale woman's dragon soars still, its shadow crossing the waves, the last breath of the old world, waiting for the new to be